This is Keys to the Shop, Founder Friday edition. Today we're talking with Miah Sommer, founder of Astute Coffee in Omaha, Nebraska. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DiFirio. I'm your host for the show, and of course, I'm so happy to have you here. Don't forget to subscribe to Keys to the Shop. When you hit subscribe, you will be signed up to receive notifications when new episodes drop. And we have quite a few every month, and that's just to add value to your life and your career. So if you don't want to miss out on the content as it comes out, then do be subscribed. And it also really helps the show when you are signed up as a listener for Keys to the Shop. So hit subscribe today, and also don't forget to share these episodes with your friends, and also share these posts that come out on Instagram or on LinkedIn, etc. Just share them with your followers and your team. That spreads the love, it spreads the information, and it really helps Keys to the Shop with a mission of creating a better coffee shop industry, coffee retail industry. So thank you everyone who's already done that. Now, Keys to the Shop, is a podcast, but did you know that there is something else on this key ring? There's another key, and that is coaching and consulting. So Keys to the Shop, coaching and consulting. This is where I get to work one-on-one with coffee shop owners, both experienced and veteran, to help them refine their businesses, assess their cafes, and work with them through challenges and projects and scaling, or working with people side by side to help them as they open their first coffee shop. And I have clients on both sides of that coin. And if that's you and you are interested in working with me one-on-one to help you build a profitable, thriving, and fulfilling coffee shop that really cares for people and is also fun for you, then definitely email me, chris@keystotheshop.com. Let's talk. We'll set up a free discovery call and chat about what's going on with your business and whether working with Keys to the Shop Consulting is the right fit for you. And I kind of let you know also that Keys to the Shop's other offering is the coaching groups. That is the key holder coaching groups. Experienced coffee shop owners, coffee shop / roastery. If you're in coffee retail and you want a community of people who are all dedicated to your success, then this is the kind of environment that I think you should explore. The key holder coaching group is about 6 to 7 people who are meeting over the course of 6 months to explore how to help each other through different challenges, encourage one another, and give insights that will help their businesses grow and help them as owners. It's a lonely position being in a place of ownership. And in this group that we just launched, actually the first group, it's already been so dynamic, so awesome. There's been laughter, there's been tears. There's a lot of notes taken and good things already happening. And so if you want to be put on the list of people who will get early access to applications when that comes about around March of 2024, we're going to be launching a few groups at one time. So we're going to be opening this up to more people. We just have one group now, but if you want early access, just send me a DM on Instagram @KeysToTheShop or email chris@keystotheshop.com. And I look forward to hearing from you. Today's episode is brought to you by the Ground Control Brewer. Now, the Ground Control Brewer, you've heard me talk about this on the show so much, revolutionized batch brew coffee. That doesn't happen very often, but the SCA award-winning technology opened up a world of extraction possibilities, allowing you to make batch iced lattes, batch cold brew. And because of its ability to batch these concentrates for cold brew in under 8 minutes, is really something that can open up some possibilities for pop-ups, mobile operations, events, and bottling. all sorts of stuff. People are using ground control for more than just batch brew coffee. And right now, the new brewer actually, that they just launched is 45% less in terms of cost than the Cyclops brewer pricing when you use early bird special, when you get their early bird special. So check them out at groundcontrol.coffee for more information. This machine, the new one, is only 24 inches high, so it's shorter than the original machine, and it has 30% higher volume for batch espresso and cold brew concentrates, and it's cloud connected to a smart dispenser that tracks your brewing data. So again, this is something I think you should really take a look at, especially considering the cost and the ability this machine has to serve your business. Check them out at groundscontrol.coffee. Now, my past in coffee started with barista work, of course, but also with latte art, winning competitions. And those were in the early 2000s where plant-based beverages were kind of new-ish. Today, it's everywhere, and there's so many options to choose from. Latte artists are always thinking about like what the best one is to use. One of the ones that I always come back to and has been the staple and the trendsetter for the entire industry of plant-based beverages is the Barista series from Pacific. It's the line of plant-based performance beverages that are created for baristas. And, they're tested by amazing baristas before any beverage is ever put on the market. So it stands up to the heat from steaming, awesome texture for latte art, balanced taste in the beverage. What more do we want here? So check them out at pacificfoodservice.com. Reach out and they'll send you samples and try it for yourself. If you want the best plant-based beverages for your customers, I think you should try the Barista series from Pacific. Okay, everybody. Well, today we are going to be talking with the founder of Astute Coffee in Omaha, Nebraska, and that is Miah Sommer. Now, this conversation, I'm going to tell you, is just such an incredible and powerful, deep conversation that relates to more than just the story of a coffee shop. There's personal triumph, there's personal challenge, and there is just this exploration of how we can be humans together in the coffee shop. And so as I talked to Miah Sommer, it just got so real and so powerful. I really am excited to share this with you. Now, if you're not familiar, Miah Sommer is a social entrepreneur and, of course, is the founder and executive director of Astute Coffee. Now, that was formerly called the Bike Union, which is a nonprofit coffee shop that provides workforce development and life skills to youth who have been impacted by the foster care system. Sommer is the past recipient of the Donna Tubach Davis Children's Advocate Award from Child Saving Institute. He was also a speaker with TEDx Omaha and has taught a workshop at Homeboy Industries Global Homeboy Network in Los Angeles, California. And the Bike Union is a winner of the Excellence in Innovation Award through Omaha Chamber of Commerce. And over these many years that they have been running the Bike Union and Astute Coffee and helping youth impacted by the foster care system, they have developed a system that not only creates a great cafe experience for their customers, of course, but also something that is incredibly impactful for the people who work there and challenges us to consider what the most important part is about creating a third place, especially around the idea of helping people. And when we're providing hospitality, how we're caring for one another, especially considering the background that a lot of the staff, and even to a degree, you'll find in this episode, Miah himself has gone through. So there's a huge empathy emphasis here. There's a lot of talk about the patience and prioritization and serving people well while serving coffee well. And Miah just does a fantastic job opening up his story, the story of how the Bike Union was formed and the evolution to Astute Coffee. Super excited for you to listen today. So let's get right to it. Here now is my conversation with the founder of Astute Coffee, Miah Sommer. Miah, welcome to Keys to the Shop. Pleasure to have you on the show. How's it going today?
It's great. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into the story here. This is a very unique coffee shop and a unique just mission that this place has. Astute Coffee wasn't always the name. You started this business as the Bike Union. And this is a bike shop, coffee shop that you started, but with a kind of a unique bent and goal. Talk a little bit about how you decided that this had to be something that you started, and why did it come in the context of a bike and coffee shop?
Like I said, we opened 8 years ago as the Bike Union and Coffee. The idea always was that we were going to open to provide workforce development for young adults who've been impacted by foster care. And the means to do that was my industry was the bike industry. So I was in the bike industry for over a decade at that point. And I was lucky enough to start in a bike shop that, when I started, it was like 6 people, one shop. The owner was still kind of in and out. And when I left, we were 6 stores in 3 states, doing, I think, close to 10 million in revenue. And so I got to really hold a lot of positions at that place. By the time I was ready to leave, we were Omaha, Kansas City, St. Louis, and I was the market manager for Omaha. And so they kind of had me doing more community type stuff, just like, hey, just do something with the community. I didn't really understand what a blessing in disguise that would be, because it really started the journey of me at 40 years old, unpacking me and who I was and why I chose the population I wanted to work with. And so it was just this really kind of serendipitous sort of thing. And then the coffee shop came as we just got this really cool old building built in the late 60s. Looks like a spaceship. It's like super Art Deco type thing. And it just was screaming to be a coffee shop. And so we made it a coffee shop. Pretty much that easy.
Okay. Now, the whole gist of what you did with the bike union is around teaching skills and giving opportunities to people who are in foster care or aged out of foster care systems. What is the connection there? Why that mission for the bike union?
Yeah, I guess too is just a little explanation of the foster care system. It differs from state to state. So the state is the one that makes the decision on when you age out. And so obviously you're in the foster care system because you were taken away from your family for neglect, abuse reasons, whatever. And then if you are still in the foster care system, if they haven't achieved reunification with your family by the time you turn 19, which is legal adulthood in the state of Nebraska, it's 18, 19, even upwards of 21 in different states, but in Nebraska it's 19. So that means you are no longer a ward of the state, and it means that you are basically on your own. You're an adult at that point. So the interesting thing about that, and is not interesting at all, is the fact that there's just like negative outcomes to that, which are high unemployment rates. Less than half will graduate from high school. 4% will get a college degree. You're a multitude more likely to become pregnant if you are a female aging out of the foster care system. And so there's just all these things that we all know are happening. And so, that's definitely why the workforce development part came in, because 50% will see unemployment. But I think more importantly for me, the reason I did it was because I was basically them. I grew up in the same way they did. I was never in the foster care system, but a visit from CPS would have certainly put me there. So I had to deal with poverty, state assistance, food shortage, depression, high school dropout, those sorts of things. And so I kind of have all the same risk factors of the people that I work with.
And so this has always been something that you have had with you as a concern and an area you wanted to help through even your bike career and cycling and the shops that you were working in prior to starting the bike union.
Yeah, it's always kind of been there. I don't think I fully realized why. And I think a lot of people who've experienced trauma will hopefully relate to that. It's just like, because your life is your life. You have a lot of the times you don't have anything to compare it to. And so, and I'm always a little slow on the uptake on things. And so, at 40, I was like, oh, wait, just like you're starting to add things up and things weren't adding up. And you're starting to ask other people, like, is it normal for this to happen? And then I think a lot of it too was a complete and total repression of it. And I thought that's only something that happened on like Days of Our Lives or something, that you repress things, but that's a real thing. It's a whole thing. Repression is. And so it was just interesting kind of coming to terms with that. That was my midlife crisis, I guess. I didn't buy a Camaro. I leaned into the trauma and started a nonprofit.
So as you're processing your past in midlife and you find yourself in a position to not only get clarity around what you have experienced, but it turned into, now I need to help other people. How did that thought come up as, it's not just about what I've been through, it's something that I want to help other people through as well?
for me, and I feel like it's true of everybody I work with, there's always been this like the trauma manifests itself in a lot of ways, and a lot of those ways are negative, as you know, we see as society. But there's always been this like part of me that's wanted to help people, almost like it's so ingrained in me that there's just a lot of talk. Is it compassion that fuels us? Is it the pragmatism that fuels us? And so for me, it was a hyper pragmatic, like I need to help people. And I don't think like this is something like, oh, this is great, look at me, I'm helping people. It was more just like I have just like chronic compassion. Like if somebody's on the side of the road, I just like I know that's my job to do it. And I don't see that as something that's like, oh, look, this is great. It's just a product of who I am. And for me, it was just like, well, okay, if I would have realized these things that I realized at midlife earlier, I would have taken some turns quicker than I did. And that's really the catalyst right there, is just like, I want to get people as they age out and they transition to adulthood, because, sometimes you can transition to adulthood and you can be sort of like a tree falling in the woods, like, if you weren't reunited with your family and the state no longer takes care of you, then who is that person that says, I'm going to put these like bumpers on you, I'm going to put these boundaries on you? For me, it was just like, well, I guess that's what we're doing here. We're going to, in a way, it's like in the nonprofit world, in the human services world, sometimes you get sainted, which, I don't really have too much time to mess around with. But if you look at it, really, it's kind of a selfish organization in the sense like I'm giving people what I wanted, like what I think I needed, what I think would have been helpful to me. And the workplace setting, I think, is the right place to do that, because, if you get somebody who's been in the system, the foster care system, we've had people that were in it, they were in 30 different families, and so that, I think 32 is the highest we've had, but, multiple placements is not unheard of at all. So you're basically been in the system for years, and once you age out, there are programs available to you, but you're no longer legally bound to do them. And so getting services to people who have aged out can be a very difficult thing. And we kind of Trojan horse that by tying it to the paycheck, because this is a job. I mean, you get paid, you're a paid barista. This is your job. It's, you interview for it. Everything else is the same way you would work or apply at any other coffee shop. But the other thing is that all of these extracurricular things, these soft skills that we do, are tied into your job. You do it here, you do it on the clock. It's kind of just like we provide this, and it's up to them to take advantage of it.
And that's because they feel reticent to do anything beyond what they're legally obligated to do because of the trauma of that system.
Yeah, I mean, it can be just like, you know what, like that's, I'm not going to enter into another organization. I'm not going to enter into another system after that, because, I mean, generally, obviously I don't want to disparage a whole industry, but the foster care system needs work. It needs overhauling. And when I say people impacted by foster care system, everyone comes to the correct conclusion on that. And that's generally can be a negative outcome. I think the other thing I want to stress with the organization and with the people I serve is like, that's everything that happened to you is not you. It's just something that happened to you. You were not destined to fulfill all these stats that are out there. Or, I mean, a lot of the times we just didn't have support from the people who mattered to us. And so there's a lot of low self-esteem or that we all struggle with. But also, when your parents aren't involved and the state is taking care of you, a lot of people can assume that trauma and all this stuff like instills grit in you, like, all right, cool, like this person knows how to deal with this stuff. But really what it does is it's learned helplessness sometimes. I certainly went through it, and if you don't govern yourself, you don't even get to choose where you live. They're just moving you from place to place. You have no say in it. You end up sometimes like a cork in a stream. And I think that's what we wanted to address, is like how the systems can really like teach people to not govern themselves
Or to disengage.
yeah, you just disengage, you get apathetic. And with this economy, when you could get fired from a job and go next door and get that job, that could be a huge detriment to somebody's professional growth, because you're not stair stepping like you should, like how, ideally you start entry level, you move up to some management, you kind of build on those skills. But if you don't improve on those things that you're bringing to the table at the job, then you don't do that stair step. And like when you can get a job literally anywhere, I think that could be really hard on somebody to grow their skills or find out what their skills actually are.
And so this program that is available to people through Astute Coffee and originally the Bike Union is meant to give them the skills that they need to work through that learned helplessness by giving them the pathway to engagement and autonomy over their life where they previously did not have it.
And obviously, I think anybody listening who owns a cafe knows that a lot of their employees probably face it too, just because, this whole disengagement and anxiety, stress, trauma, like the pandemic did that to a lot of people. It's definitely not exclusive to the people we work with. But I guess the difference for us is that is our main goal, and not to, we are a failing business because we're putting people in the positions who might not be ready to be in those positions. And so it's not about profit, it's about the actual program itself. I think that's kind of what's unique about it. But I think working with this population is not in itself super unique because a lot of people have experienced it.
Right. And in certain degrees of the same thing, like you say, exists. And yet, given the examples that you were mentioning of how often people are changing settings in the foster system, it feels like a weaponized version of maybe a common, we all have maybe a tendency to disassociate when we feel helpless in a situation. But for people who have a concentrated dose of that in their formative years, it's an arrested development issue. And so, where you come in to set up a coffee shop and then also, they'll put people under pressure to perform in a customer facing environment, feels like, man, it's a dynamic situation that requires a lot of forethought. I mean, what went into just the planning of how that's going to integrate for their benefit in this coffee shop environment?
I think that's the interesting part is the type of planning, because it's like, we started this thing and you think like there's a ton of this stuff going on. And so we're going to use the empirical data out there. But still, it's like what we're doing is unique. And I mean, some people have dropped the label innovative on it, which I wouldn't rush to judgment on that. But there's not a lot of empirical data out there on it, because while there are a lot of social enterprises that work even with this population, social enterprises, well, so basically, I guess for those who don't know, the social enterprise is basically an organization that uses business practices to address a social issue. And so for us, it's just the trauma of, the workforce development coming out of the trauma of the foster care system. So for us, we have these examples around the country. After I started, I found, there's definitely places. There's Prodigy Coffee in Colorado. There's a Monkey and the Elephant in Philadelphia. I think we were open before both of those places, I think at 8 years now, but I don't know. It was definitely around the same time. Had conversations with them, very helpful. Homeboy Industries is a bakery started by a Jesuit priest in LA over 30 years ago. He's amazing. He's definitely one of my heroes. And it's just like getting rival gang members to work together. So everybody has this kind of idea about this. There are things out there. But when it came time for us to actually figure out how it was going to work, it was just like, well, I had to take a lot from my juvenile delinquent background, and I had to take a lot from my for-profit background, of just like, well, I kind of want to do it a different way. And so, was just like, all right, you can, if you make it a 3-week program, say, then you're going to serve a lot of people. But I was just like, well, what's the point? Like, are we starting this for numbers, or are we starting this to actually affect human beings and put them on a positive road? And like, if it wasn't the latter, then I had no interest in it. So there was a point when I was starting, it's just like, I don't know if this is something I want to do. I want to actually do this, because there are nonprofits that work, and there are nonprofits that do maybe eat up more philanthropic dollars than they should, because we judge nonprofits sometimes on real estate or budget size or numbers or things like that. And so for me, it was just like, if I'm going to work with people like me, I don't want this to be like a whole, smoke and mirrors thing. So, we kind of just said, hey, this is going to be a year-long program, because I feel like that's how you're going to get to know people, and so we're chugging along and obviously learning all our lessons in the first year. But I think one of the funniest stories of it was about a year and a half into the organization, and I was just scrolling on Facebook for something, and I saw here in Omaha that there was a seminar coming up about employing people who've experienced trauma. And I was just like, this is exactly what I need. This is perfect. Like, I'm going to record this so I can get everything out of that because I need to figure out what's going on. And so I go to my calendar to put it on there, and it's already on there because I'm presenting at it. I was the I was the one who was teaching it. It was definitely one of those like in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king things,
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like we are really kind of in this area where there's not a ton of empirical data on it. That really opened my eyes, I think.
So when you started off, you're learning as you go. Your personal experiences are guiding you both from you mentioned the for-profit world and the hardships growing up. So you're empathetically integrating the things that you would have wanted in the work environment. And what does that include? So when you first started the bike union, how did that shake out? I mean, you've got equipment for making coffee, you've got equipment for fixing bikes or selling parts and that kind of stuff, I imagine. But what did you start off with, and how quickly did you evolve what you put in the program once you started seeing your own empirical data?
Yeah, we really just hit the ground running, and we would, yeah, kind of just find these things where it's just like, all right, this person is showing up late all the time. And because of that, they are smart enough to know that this is a workforce development program. So they know we're not going to fire them. And so, like, how do you get them to show up on time? Like things like that, like small things that you didn't think about. And so, we would just come up with these like plans of like, all right, if they don't show up this many times, then we're going to do this or that. And so it's like, okay, the hourly rate changes based on if they show up on time or not. And so it got so intricate that we had to get a labor lawyer to say like, all right, is what we're doing legal here? And it was like, it's like a check system. Like if you're late 2 times and you lose $1 an hour, you don't get tips. That's and all of these things that ended up putting some teeth into it, at least because now it's tied to money, I guess is how it worked out.
Yeah, yeah.
And that helped a lot. But I think there was just a bunch of that stuff.
Though putting teeth to it, it's interesting because that kind of two things. One, you're getting participants in this program as employees, and you need to maintain a certain level of consistency as a business in order to have business at all, to have some regularity of business. Do you have a core group of employees that are not in the program as coaches and then program participants that are being coached? How does the stability of the business work?
In the beginning, that was hard because you didn't have any experience at all with it. And so, kind of what we're talking about, like learning and finding our way. So, in the beginning, we had two of us that weren't in the program. And those would kind of be the people that would help run the organization. And, in the beginning, it really kind of ended up being like the bike shop. There's a few of the kids who worked at the bike shop and a few who worked at the coffee shop. And then that kind of just like the bike shop ended up getting so busy that we just ended up closing it down to focus on the coffee shop because that's where it was like, and I think it'd be interesting to touch on that later of how coffee really kind of tied the whole thing together. But we needed, like you said, somebody to run the business in the beginning. That helped, like, here's what you do. And they walking them through this. Here's how you change a flat. Here's how you pull a shot. And here's all this stuff. And the good thing about that was after years of that happening, you started basically a farm team. These were the minor leagues. And so at this point right now, we have 12 of us all together. And of the 12 of us, there's only 2 of us that haven't been in the program or aren't currently in the program. So most everybody is familiar with the program. They've gone through it or they're in it. That's the nice part about being 8 years old and being further down the line is then it's all like, all right, this is what happened when I first started. This would happen when I hit the 6 month point and thought I knew everything and the wheels came off. And, you start to understand, you catch the references, the patterns, and that makes it so much easier.
And so now somebody entering into this with all the momentum and lessons you've learned, you can track their progress in many different ways more consistently than previously. Maybe there's two areas that I imagine, and you tell me that there's just the job itself, but then there's also the progress that they're making that's directly tied to life skills or interpersonal work skills and that kind of thing. How do you track that kind of progress that somebody is making in either of those two areas or more areas, I suppose?
It really brought into like, we were talking about how we had to find our way as far as the training and find our way what programming we did. And coming from the for-profit world, like asking people for money was really hard. Kind of tied into that was like, all right, I better show some outcomes. I better show that this money that this these people gave us a $50,000 check, this foundation. I want to show them that I'm being a good steward of their philanthropic dollars. Again, like everybody we employ is smart. They read things, whether they use it for good or bad is up to them. But they quickly kind of like understood that you are afraid to push us too hard. You are afraid to fire us because if you fire us, then your numbers look bad. I think that was really interesting. So basically, what happened was I stopped caring about outcomes. And I didn't know I had the permission to do that. Again, I was just trying to follow formulas. I didn't know I had the permission to like just do this my way. And I was just like, I don't really care about making them into something. I just want them to I want them to get the services and they're going to do with it what they want. And so obviously it's all based on relationships. It's all based on individual outcomes, individual relationships. And so it was like, I feel like the minute I stopped salivating over outcomes was when everything kind of took off. I could hold people accountable. I could be me because I'm a dad and I'm a very dad manner to me of just like, so they know like dad's disappointed, dad's joking around,
Right.
dad's this, and so I got to be like, all right, cool. Like I'm going to hold you to this, but I'm going to do it in a way that, I'm not leaving you or, I'm not like ending this relationship because all of us have that sort of trauma with us of like ending relationships and, now you hate me, now you're going to leave type thing. Navigating those things is a lot easier when you can just be upfront and authentic with them.
Almost feels like the most respectful thing you could do is approach it that way for their benefit. Not that you're going to push them for an outcome, but that I trust you to take this and do what you will do. But my hope is that you do something great, in that it's accountability based on believing in them, not believing in the default to do the wrong thing, but believing the right thing will happen.
Right. And it's amazing how far that goes. We had this program participant and they had been through every program. They brought their difficulties. I was really close with them and, we would struggle and we would fight and we would even have shouting matches sometimes. And I think they threatened to punch me in the face a few times, but, which is not completely uncommon. The newspaper was doing a story on us. They did a nice big story on us, and this person was sharing how they got their first A in college since middle school. And so the reporter was just like, well, how'd you get your first A? And they said, because somebody told me I could. I could spend $1 jillion on marketing and never catch the essence of what the program is supposed to do. It's not us doing things for them. It's not charity. It's not a handout. It is just somebody giving somebody the tools and telling them they can do it and watching them do it. It's like we're the dirt, they're the flowers type thing. You just set the environment and people do what they want. And I don't want to make them me, and I don't want to make them something that I think the donors want to see, or, they're not going to be barista champions probably, but they are going to go a direction of their life they might not have gone if somebody wasn't telling them they could.
And telling them that they have the choice of what they become.
Yeah, you govern all these decisions. Like the people are no longer making decisions for you, and that's can be like hard for them to grasp. But once they get that, it's like, all right, cool, you can do that, and then that just like makes its way to so many different things. And the thing I like about the coffee shop setting is like a lot of times with these social enterprises, it's, they're doing like electronics recycling, or they're, in the back at a bakery or something like that. But I really wanted to make sure this was a forward facing, customer facing thing, because I think interpersonal communication is the hugest asset to anybody wanting to succeed in workforce development, and there is an empathy to interacting with people. There's an empathy to interacting with customers. And, you have to see how every one of your actions, and as a barista, as working the register, you have to see how every one of your, like little nuances affect the person who is, there, whether it's like, I've been in customer service for so long, and I go to a coffee shop and I say thank you, and they're like, you're welcome. It's just like that for some reason just drives me bananas. It's more just like, I want our baristas to know there's a coffee shop, a good throw hits another coffee shop with the rock around here, we're downtown. And so they chose us. Make sure you thank them for choosing us, and make sure you're just like, again, like the empathy of the interpersonal communication, make sure you're seeing how everything you say and do affects them, makes them want to come back, thanks them for coming in, literally and figuratively, I guess, in your actions and words.
That's so interesting. Now, you mentioned earlier the coffee tying everything together. Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, that for sure. And I think, have you talked to any coffee shop, they all have their reasons for being. And I think it's great. And you can always feel those like little things when you go. And I love going into coffee shops and I love walking in and getting, what's the feel here? What is it? Is it just a facade? Is it just like a really cool place? Are the owners passionate about coffee? Is it this or that? I mean, all of that. But everybody says they want community, like they want to create a community. And I totally believe that. And we want it as well. But I think for us, like the extra tie in the coffee was so interesting as I, dug deeper and deeper into the coffee world, like the coffee industry, the coffee genre. Like for me, my trauma definitely manifested itself in like I had a fairly normal life until my dad left, and then that left all the stability was there. So it's like with him, and so kind of like any stability I had went away. And so whenever I liked something, loved something, I feared that it would go away. And I've talked about this with the staff too. Coffee has been so therapeutic in the sense that it's all so temporary. We're always chasing that perfect cup we might have had at one time, but lots aren't infinite with single origins. So you get this lot, like, okay, like I might not get that again, or every pour over is different. And for me, just like the whole like temporary part of like the whole fleeting part, it was super therapeutic. And like talking with our staff about it, it's just like, cool, we might like, this is the last of this co-ferment right here that we all love, and it's gone now. Another one's going to come along, but like we all still like, oh, remember that one,
Hmm.
remember the tequila sunrise from Black and White, that was great, right? And so it's easier to kind of like deal with things coming in and out of your life like that. And also, I think it's very interesting in the sense of like our nonprofit, our whole work, our whole program is based on relationships, authentic relationships. And especially coffee is also, you have to have relationships with the importers, you have to have relationships with the growers and the producers. Like if you don't have that, you're not going to succeed. And so it's great to be around this industry now where whereas before it was just built on so much bad stuff of just like, like people didn't get anything back, or you didn't know who the producers were, like I love now that, it's like, all right, we know like Elk and Guzman, like we know names like that. We know like, oh, this is going to be great because I've had that person's coffee before. And I do like that it's just like more of it feels like the world is a little bit smaller when you know who's producing it and sending it to that roaster is sending it to you then. And I love like the kind of interconnectedness of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And if you don't have those relationships, you're not getting that, you're not sourcing that coffee. And I think it's really great that the whole industry, from producer to me, saying like, hey, you got to try this stuff, to a customer and sitting down with them and having it, is like, it's great. It creates community, but it really just puts the focus on relationships and real ones.
Real ones. I like that. As you're talking about realness, and even I forget who the actor is. He has a podcast now called Real Ones. He was the Punisher. He did the Punisher movie. Anyway, the idea of real ones being a lack of pretension, in a sense, like when we experience customer service and hospitality, oftentimes what we get is such a thick act of service and hospitality that we forget what human beings are like. And in a lot of ways, that may be a safety mechanism for people working in hospitality. It's also something the industry has sort of self-perpetuated. But when someone gives you authentically good service and they are true and connect with you, it's almost a little jarring, if not a little risky to do. And especially given the folks that you're working with who might not feel like the risk to invest in authenticity in a relationship is worth it. But it sounds like this is something that is practiced at the shop.
It's priority number one on everything, I think, because people are moved by the relationship, whether that's our internal customer or our external customer. But like relationships are the hugest thing. I mean, I think you're not going to get in trouble if your whole thing is taking care of the customer. And they see me interacting with customers, they see me interacting with them. And I think people don't come back for the paycheck, they come back for the relationship. So we have, we have 8 years now of program graduates that are just like coming into the shop all the time. It's just like, all right, cool. And we've fired people and they came in the next day and hung out for 3 hours. It's just because the relationship supersedes all of that. And they know if somebody comes in talking about pour overs, they're like, all right, you're not getting your quarterback from Miah. Like, I'm going to like go there. And if the customer will allow me and I have the time, I will sit at the table with them and we'll sample stuff and, we'll just talk about it. And then, you end up being friends with them, and it's, you can spot the coffee dorks and you want to talk to them too. But also, biking and coffee were the same thing. There was elitism, and I very much want to drive home the point. Like, you want to put milk in it, put milk in it. You want to, chocolate choo blended drink, whatever. Like, it's not a wrong tune if you're singing it. Like, it's come in, order what you want. Like, everybody has their tastes, and like, I am not the person that's going to judge anybody on that. And I hope that is like in the leadership shadow too. But I think everybody, if you're doing this job, you are a people focused person. I mean, I'm the executive director, founder, and so like I really don't know what the hell is going on. I mean, I'm more like it's just them trying to like control this child who wants to talk to all the customers about coffee or whatever. But the people on the ground, like I just think of Curtis and Taviana and Josie and Alec and all these people that really are the heart and soul of the place. They are all so focused on people, and they're so compassionate to the customers, because we work right by a high school. So if they spot a kid who's having some trouble, like our employees have pulled them aside and just be like, cool, you good? You got everything you need at home, and have started relationships with them too and getting them what they need. But anywhere from like finding like maybe, hey, that high school kid didn't have cuts on his arm yesterday and now they do. I'm going to pull them aside and talk to them when that's happened numerous times. And then also just getting each other. I mean, like when you're dealing with trauma, it's a real heavy thing. And so they have had to run to the pedestrian bridge over the Missouri River to get their coworkers off the bridge from jumping off. It's like, it's real stuff that happens. And so going back to the customer service part, our customers know what we do. The regulars know what goes on here. They know people, they have relationships. So if maybe one day the latte is oversteamed, they pick up the pieces and come back tomorrow and don't run to Yelp with it or something. Where, it's really good community backing that way. It's like, I think it's like we're all doing it, but the public can come in and they can buy their coffee and they can come in and grow everyone's social network. And I think that's the whole part where the community works into it too.
It really makes me think about earlier when we were talking about how a lot of the things experienced by yourself and the participants here at Astute Coffee, those things are things that human beings experience in many different ways. And even if you're not a customer of a coffee shop where the baristas are in this program, there's maybe a good chance that the barista is experiencing those things in an average coffee shop. It's just not as formal. And so the compassion that we show to one another, whether it's behind the bar or across the counter, we have excellence as one of the things that we like to talk about. But it feels like there has to be this compassionate excellence as a really holistic way of pursuing it, especially given we don't know what people's stories are, whether they're customers or professionals.
Right. It is. And balancing that can be tricky sometimes when someone doesn't know that that's what we're doing here, but, we do a good job of just saying like, hey, this is what we do. This is our mission. So most of the people know, but it is interesting of just like, I do think even above excellence, we want excellence in our coffee. We take it seriously, but humanity is first and foremost here, and then just finding those people. And we have customers that have said like, I have like gone through suicidal episodes and I come in and just visit with your staff and leave not feeling that way. And that's not us, that's not me doing it, it's the staff here that is just like has such an eye for trauma, has such an eye for humanity that they do it. They're on the lookout for that because that's just kind of the vibe around here. But it does sound like we're all hugging each other and singing Kumbaya, but really it's just, they generally just, I'm still waiting on my boss's day present. Let's just say that. I'm the dad or the older brother, and they rip on me pretty good. And it's just a family setting. It's fun. We just have fun with each other. We have fun with our social media. I just think everybody has to mesh, and they do. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And also the greatest thing I've ever done in my life is working with these people who've experienced so much trauma.
What kind of advice would you give to the audience here? You're mostly, business owners, leaders in coffee shops and roasteries and things, who I believe are people focused. We talk a lot about that on the show, people first systems, people first leadership, and that kind of thing. Whether they want to do this officially as a participant with another organization to help out in their community, or they just want to employ more of a compassionate and human way of doing things in their coffee shop. If you had your way, how would you want to inspire the coffee industry to really accomplish that, like in the communities that we do serve and that we do create?
I like what I see in a lot of coffee shops of it being very open. And I just like the idea of it, just like the coffee shop as this place for community, but this place for acceptance, this place for coming in as you are, whether you're black, white, gay, trans, straight, whatever. Like, for us, it's very inclusive. We're very in your face about that. But then also that goes over to the lack of elitism in the coffee industry of just like, I think it works for some people, but who cares if people want to get a nice single origin coffee and put a little cream in it, and like that doesn't matter. Like all that stuff, like in the end, like I think we can all move on with our lives if that happens. And so I always shudder when customers like, is it okay if I put some cream in this? It's like, yeah, like this is your drink. You paid for it, do whatever you want.
What have we done? What have
Yeah, what have we become, type thing. But I do think it's getting better, I do think that's been a focus for so long that that sort of elitism is hopefully being called out. And if that, sometimes that works for people for their business, that if that's your shtick, then great, But for us, it just didn't work that way. But also, I think if you're working with people and you're truly focused on people, I think just making sure that you have the bandwidth to do that, because secondary trauma is a real thing, and it is like compassion fatigue is a real thing. And so, when I'm always all about just like start your own nonprofit. People contact me a lot. I want to do this. I found you, people from all over the country like, hey, I found you and I want to do this same thing. Do you have some time? And I always make time for those people. And I'm always, very upfront about what to expect. And I think when you're working with people who've experienced trauma, if I'm going to tell you that it's all just like, oh, this is great and the whole world loves you and you have these like additional kids, it does, it doesn't really work. That's not how the real world works. It can be difficult. I always think of that. There's that bridge in France where everybody puts locks on it. Like you go under that bridge and you put a lock on it, and they had to like cut all the locks off because like it's this giant bridge. What's one lock? But like when you're dealing with that, the locks do start to pile up and the weight starts to maybe compromise the engineering of the whole thing. And so there's some maintenance that needs to be done. So if you're going to work with people, just know who you are. I guess know your song before you start singing type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. This has been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate all the work that you and your team have done. And it's probably impossible to even track how much good you've done in people's worlds and in this particular area of coffee and social enterprise. So thank you so much, Miah. If we could go anywhere to learn more about what you're doing at Astute Coffee, where would you send us?
I would go to astutecoffee.org, and I would definitely follow us on Facebook and Instagram under Astute Coffee, just because that's where the kids like to have a lot of fun. I do want to add that it's, was really excited to come on the show because I think you're a great interviewer, and I think it kind of goes beyond what the whole premise was. And I just recently heard Xavier from Metric Coffee, and I thought that was a great episode, just like him making himself vulnerable, and like I just like connected with that so much. And I thought that you providing a space to make people feel safe to do that is commendable. So thanks for running a great show here. I've enjoyed every episode I've heard.
Oh, man, well, I appreciate you saying so. Thank you. And thank you for being on the show. It's really fantastic to hear this story. And again, pleasure to hear this and be inspired by you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everybody. Well, I really can't overemphasize just how important it is to think about the common humanity that we are constantly interacting with in our roles as coffee professionals. Whether somebody officially has gone through a foster care system or not, we are working next to and serving people who have many different challenges in their past. And how kind we are and how willing we are to be there for them is so important. And Miah and his team have given us such a great example of how we can do this and really make a difference in people's lives. This is not just something about transactions, or it's not just about numbers, as Miah was talking about. He wants to make impact, and that is the reward. And so as we pull ourselves from our spreadsheets and look out to the sea of people that we have in our circles of influence, let's let this interview be a challenge to us to lean into the human aspect of what we do, because whether we call ourselves this or not, as entrepreneurs, we are social entrepreneurs. That's what coffee is. It is a social endeavor. And I'm so thankful for people like Miah taking his experiences in his past and applying them in such a way that has helped so many people. I appreciate you being on the show, Miah. Thank you so much for all you do. Now, if you'd like to learn more about Astute Coffee, go ahead and visit astutecoffee.org. And you can also find Astute Coffee on Instagram, and that would just be under Astute_coffee on Instagram, at Astute_coffee. Of course, links in the show notes for those. And again, hope this was a really impactful interview for you. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback about today's episode, I would really love to hear it. Go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. It's also where you can reach out if you're interested in coaching and consulting for your business, or if you want to sign up for the early registration for next year's key holder coaching groups for coffee shop owners through Keys to the Shop. chris@keystotheshop.com. And with that, that is the end of our episode, everyone. Appreciate you as always. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, share these episodes, and I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.